Good evening, everyone. Hello, it's Coach Tracy here. It is Tuesday night, Tough Love Tuesday. I hope everyone had a wonderful week last week when I took the evening off, and I thought today I would come back and kind of redo a broadcast that I did a little over a year ago about sugar. Sugar. I want to talk about the case against sugar and challenges with it. And I hope that you'll be able to take the time to watch this broadcast. So I'm a certified integrative nutrition health coach, certified personal trainer, and I used to be pre-diabetic. I was diagnosed pre-diabetic, I believe, in 2006, highly addicted to sugar. I lost my way with my fitness and my health journey. I was under high amounts of stress, and I also was not exercising. I was not getting any sleep, but darn, I sure was eating a lot of sugar. So I like to talk about sugar because it really impacted my health. It really harmed my health, and I just want to keep spreading that word. So I want to thank everyone who's watching tonight on Facebook and YouTube, and then also to any listeners that will be listening on the podcast later. I am recording live, and sometimes stuff happens and audio goes funny. So, and I don't edit, so we're just going to go for it, right? Every week. So, okay, let's get into it. So, sugar, again, it's a controlling aspect in my life. Even to this day, I work to battle my sugar addiction. I remember starting to eat sweet tarts, big sweet tarts. They were like, I don't know, these guys about this big. Oh, as far back as probably third grade or fourth grade. I became highly addicted to the sugary kind of sugar, very tart things. Later in life, it was runts. I couldn't get past a Walgreens or a Rite Aid because I knew the runts were in there, and would buy the big box of runts. And then I would eat them all, probably within an hour and a half, and then I would crash. So then I'd have coffee, and then I'd have salt, and then I'd do it all over again. I didn't feel good. And then I remember one day, I was just upset with myself, and I had gained the weight. And then I just noticed that I was running to the bathroom a lot. And sure enough, I didn't think much of it. But when I went to the doctor for my annual checkup, it was, gosh, Tracy, you're pre-diabetic. But you can do something about it, my doctor said. And I was like, great, what? And so a lot of it was basically, I remember the main thing she taught me, the one thing that stuck was to start eating more whole grains. But otherwise, I was sent out on my own to figure out how to reverse my pre-diabetic state. So one of the big ones was reining in my sugar addiction. Okay, so I found that definitely sugar comes in many different forms. And some are claimed in marketing to be better than others. Some have names you wouldn't even recognize as sugar on a label. So it's really important to learn these things. And the whole subject of sugar in the health industry is confusing. So you'll hear things like, oh, it's okay in moderation, or your body isn't designed to digest sugar. Sugar-free products are always healthy. You might hear artificial sweeteners are worse. You might hear you need sugar for energy, or sugar is addictive. That one is for sure, it is addictive, but it can be also confusing, right? So there are all these claims, and they all oppose each other. But one thing's for certain, we're definitely consuming way too much sugar, and it's in our diets more than ever before. The United States Department of Agriculture says the average American consumes 150 to 170 pounds of sugar a year. So think about stacking that up in your home, 150 to 170 pounds of sugar a year. How could that be, right? That's awful. I'm so sorry. It's refined sugars. Um, they we used to consume in the early 1800s about 4 to 6 pounds of sugar, um, and then we went to about 90 pounds of consumption in the 1900s. And you think, gosh, there's no possibility we could be, again, eating that much sugar, 150 to 170 pounds of sugar per year. So that is a lot of sugar. Um, so if, that figure is correct. And so if you think about that, it's going to translate to about a quarter to a half a pound or 30 to 60 teaspoons of sugar per day on average per American. And it's hard for me to believe that. However, when I think back to the way I used to eat, I'm like, wow, I definitely was there. And the reason was, it wasn't like I was just pouring sugar on everything I ate, but it was hiding in a lot of things that I did eat, a lot of the processed foods that I ate, a lot of things when I ate out. So there's a fun game you can play called Sugar Hide and Seek when you buy food. It's hidden in so many things. So ketchup, barbecue sauce, tomato sauces, marinades, salad dressings, yogurts, breads, protein bars, peanut butter, soups, canned fruits, cereals, crackers, oatmeal, frozen dinners, and so many other places. So there's also all the obvious places where you're going to find sugar that's in sodas and cookies, ice cream. But there are so many ways that sugar gets into your diet that you just aren't aware of. And that's one thing as a coach now, or just someone trying to find something easy to eat. When I read the labels, I'm like, oh, why does the food have to have this sugar in it? And I'm going to throw in there too, why is this processed food have to have so much salt? Okay, but that's another topic. So there are other words for sugar. So there's sugar aliases, and these are one of the reasons why you may not realize you're having so much sugar in your diet, because it's hidden in different names. So you might see something like dextrose or maltose, glucose, fructose, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, corn sweetener, sucrose, sorbitol, sorghum syrup, agave nectar, carbitol, evaporated cane juice, galactose, inversol, rice malt, sorbitol, nectars. That's just to name a few. There's a lot more of them like that. So one thing that really helped me to discover hidden sugars were any words with an OSE or an IDES on the end. So OSE, like fructose, and then the IDES, and that will, I probably, how do I not have that one? I don't have one of those on my list, but anyway, you look for the IDES ending, and that way you can know that, oh my gosh, that is some type of sugar product. Thankfully, some of the food labels, they're at least in the United States, they're having to show added sugars, because some foods do have fruit in them, like a yogurt might have natural fruit added. So but if they add anything above and beyond that, then they need to disclose that there's added sugars, additional sugars added to the food item. So anyway, what's the big deal? Why am I on my soapbox about sugar? It's just that it's making a lot of people sick. It's in most all the foods we eat. And we really should care, right? Again, I had become pre-diabetic and had a horrible sugar addiction. So the hardest part and the biggest problem with excessive sugar consumption is that most health issues do not manifest immediately. So if they do, they're not usually recognized as being caused by our diet. The aspect of what we put into our body causes a reaction within our body. So they're still trying to make connections to the fact that mental illness, behavioral problems, those are usually not looked at as in diet. They're usually looked at and other sources. Allergies, arthritis, migraines are explained by environment, stress levels, responses to medications. We've got immune disorders, degenerative diseases, diabetes, and cancer. These things take time to diagnose, and most people aren't looking at their food and pulling out a food journal and say, is there something that I'm possibly putting in my body through my diet, my everyday eating, that could be causing some of these challenges? So what's wonderful is there's so much more research happening about the impacts of sugar on these diseases. So it's not looking good for the case of sugar. So I remember when my husband had he had cancer, and one of the first books they gave him, this is years and years ago, and he recovered fine from it, was again talking about don't eat sugar. Sugar feeds cancer cells, so you don't want to be eating sugar. So I just thought I'd bring that up as a real life experience of mine. So the reason why sugar is so dangerous, it's good to know why that is. So when we consume sugar before it leaves our digestive tract, is composed of two simple sugars, so glucose and fructose. Okay, so glucose is an important energy source, and it's easy to obtain. If we don't eat it in our diets, basically, if we don't consume it, our bodies will produce it. Okay, however, fructose is different. So our bodies don't produce much of it, and pretty much there's no need for it to do it. So there's no proven physiological need for fructose at all at this point. But so what happens then is we'll focus on insulin. Okay, so the relationship between sugar and insulin resistance becomes a crucial topic. Insulin is an important hormone, one of the most important hormones in our bodies, and it's responsible for directing glucose into cells to be used for our energy. Okay, so however, when we have too much fructose and glucose in our bloodstream, the cells will get to a point where the insulin is high, and then the cells do not respond to insulin to open their little gate doors to allow the glucose in to provide energy. So it's a lot more detailed than that. But anyway, what happens then is our pancreas keeps making more and more insulin. But over time, there's too much sugar in the bloodstream for the pancreas to even begin to make enough insulin to keep blood sugars down. And so that's what's called insulin resistance. The cells just don't open up anymore to allow glucose in, and then it's just flowing around in our bloodstream. So insulin resistance is thought to be a huge contributor to many diseases, included but not limited to type 2 diabetes. I was a pre-diabetic on my way to being type 2. Obesity, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. And it's also being linked now to many challenges with our brain health. Okay, so even after these diseases develop, elevated blood sugars can remain high and an ongoing problem if we don't fix it. And that's why, say for a diabetic, for example, they may end up with complications like blindness, neuropathy, loss of feeling. Just it's so damaging. So other consequences is obesity and weight issues. So this is a hard pill to swallow. 1 of 3 children and 2 out of 3 adults are either overweight or obese in the United States. And sugar's role in this is much more serious than just adding in some empty calories. So instead, it impacts the hormones of the body, and it impacts the hormones responsible for letting us know that we are full. And we don't realize that we don't need to eat. It will also make us want to eat. I knew when I was very much, when you're eating sugar and you just like popping stuff in your mouth and kind of become a little bit crazed over it. It's a problem. Okay. So it affects those hormones that help us know that we're satisfied with our food. So, knowing this alone strengthens the case that there is 60% increased risk of obesity in children for every daily serving of sugar-sweetened beverages in their diets. It's important to note that the weight gain from sugar is often present around the abdomen, okay, and a visceral fat area. And that is fat that is around your organs. Is usually, again, that type of if you are thin in the legs, but you are big around the waistline, that's a big problem. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I didn't mean to say that. That wasn't planned, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So, sugar is the leading factor in the rise of obesity among many other complications. Liver. Okay, so our liver is extremely important to us. It's very important for our body. And fructose, one of the main components of sugar, is metabolized by the liver, but only in significant amounts at the time. So it wouldn't be a big deal, but it can only process so much sugar. So if you've taken too much sugar, the liver will turn it in a good way. In a good process, it'll turn it to glucose that we can use for our energy. But if we get too much, if there's too much glycogen in the liver and you keep overloading it with too much sugar, that's going to make the liver turn it to fat. And that's the beginning of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that's why you can see someone that maybe eats a lot of sugar and they might be thin, but they are diagnosed with fatty liver disease because they're eating too much sugar. So I'm going to put a little side topic there. We were just talking about obesity, but you can be skinny fat too. You might look good, but you may not have any muscle on your bones and you're all fat. Okay, so that's how you can, so something to think about in how your body metabolism is. Okay, so luckily our liver can repair itself. So we just need to give it the opportunity by cutting back on our sugar intake. Heart health. So there have been so many misconceptions about what causes cardiovascular disease. And one of the main ones that came out, I think it was in the 80s, maybe in the 70s, when it was thought that it was fat causes fat. And the reality is that sugar is the main culprit. Ever since we went to this non-fat diet, all of those things like that, all of a sudden sugar ended up in most all foods. Then the rise of heart disease went up. So sugar consumption is the leading contributor to the number one killer in the world, and that's heart disease. Okay. So studies show that consuming a large amount of fructose can cause a rise in the bad cholesterol. That's your LDL cholesterol. It can raise your blood glucose, your insulin levels, and create abdominal obesity. These things can, just in 10 weeks of starting to consume a lot of sugar, these markers can go up. So that's a pretty quick response, the body trying to process all of this sugar. Okay. So all of those things here, I talked about high bad cholesterol, LDL, blood glucose being high, insulin levels being high, and abdominal obesity, these are all major risk factors for developing heart disease. Okay. So, sugar versus immunity, our immune system. Okay. Immune system is responsible for defending your body against illness. All right. So, that's a big deal, huge. Your immune system can be compromised if you're putting yourself into danger by eating too much sugar. So there was a study through Loma Linda University. 100 grams of sugar can make your white blood cell counts 40%. Make your white blood cells 40% less effective in killing germs. So on top of already putting your body in the stress, in a stressed and irritated state by having elevated sugar levels, sugar directly affects your main line of defense against disease. Here's the other thing, and I hate reading this because I'm a sugar addict. I think always one. I'm always working on this aspect of this sugar addiction that I've had since I was a kid. But the alarming part, when you eat sugar, these crippling effects stay in your body for up to 5 hours after you eat it. So that explained a lot. When I'd go to Rite Aid and I'd get the big box of runts and I eat them all, I felt so awful for a long time, my poor body to process them. So regarding cancer, I know I mentioned a little earlier about my husband having cancer in 2006. The first book they gave him was about sugar feeding cancer. So it is pretty interesting because sugar is so prevalent in our everyday diets, and it's hard to believe that it is when it's known to feed cancer cells. So cancer is uncontrolled growth, and the multiplication of cells is also one of the leading causes of death worldwide. So how is sugar related, you ask? So insulin is the key here. Insulin is one of the main hormones responsible for regulating the growth of these cells. It has been concluded that having constantly elevated insulin levels can indeed contribute to cancer. So do you remember what I said earlier about insulin and sugar? So consuming sugar raises insulin levels. Now there is a considerable amount of evidence how this contributes to cancer risk and progression. So, so I hate to say it, all our wonderful sweet treats don't serve us very well. So here we can talk about next is the brain. So we've got the brain. Sugar affects our brain, okay, our brain health. Studies show that sugar slows down the brain's function, hinders new learning, and decreases memory recall. There's also strong connections between high sugar intake and the prevalence of depression and anxiety. I can speak to that. Okay, so I know when I have sugar, it upsets my digestive tract. It sets off those hormones and I get horrible anxiety and I feel more emotional. So that link is pretty incredible. And I talked about this a little bit too when I was eating the runts, the big sugar crash. There's irritability, decreased mood, brain fog, fatigue. And I was in that loop and I didn't see it. So I just kept eating sugar. I was having coffee, a little bit too much wine, some chocolate, pre-diabetic. Okay. So the foods rich in sugar disrupt our brain's neurotransmitters, and those work to stabilize our moods. And if we're continually disrupting the function of these receptors, we no longer have the inherent control over our mood as we usually do. So according to Dr. Karazian, a functional medicine expert and author, there's a huge this is a huge contribution to chronic depression is sugar. Okay. And it's sad. It's a bummer. So are you addicted? I know myself well enough. Once you've had an addiction, which I did, it is hard. It's a focused effort for me to not eat it. And so addiction, we can use that word lightly, but saying you are addicted to your favorite food, for example, isn't necessarily encompassing the real meaning of the word. So addiction, according to the American Society of Additional Medicine, ASAM, addiction is primarily chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. Dysfunction of these circuits leads to characteristic biological, physiological, social, and spiritual manifestations. This is reflected in an individual pathologically pursuing reward and or relief by substance use and other behaviors. They continue to say, addiction is characterized by an inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavioral control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behaviors and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. So like other chronic diseases, addiction often involves cycles of relapse and remission. And without treatment or engagement in recovery activities, addiction is progressive and can result in disability or premature death. So that's a pretty long definition, but it's important to really know what we're talking about when we say sugar is addicting. And it is, okay? It's highly addictive. And just like other highly addictive things like alcohol, drugs, we have to shine a light on it and really look at what that impact of sugar is in your life. And what I talk about in my 30-day junk food and sugar debunk challenge is I do a lot of coaching on that and figuring out where is this addiction coming from, and then helping to, live past that, get past that addiction. So with that, we're going to talk a bit more why this sugar can be addicting, is that dopamine. There's dopamine as a neurotransmitter responsible for controlling reward and pleasure in the brain. So when we eat a lot of sugar, a massive amount of dopamine is released in the brain. And as you continue to consume sugar, the dopamine becomes less powerful, making the response less effective. So then you need more sugar to create the same euphoric dopamine reaction. And this continues into that vicious cycle, much like what happens with drug addictions. This is exactly what was happening to me when I couldn't not go to Rite Aid and buy the runs, eat the Skittles. I didn't care what the result was. I just wanted them, and I had to have more and more and more to get that dopamine effect. So there was a study that proved that addictive qualities in sugar with rats and Oreos. It was a test. The pleasure region of previously drug-addicted rat brains were significantly more active when exposed to Oreo cookies compared to cocaine. So there is a pretty significant link to sugar and addiction to drugs. That it's the same kind of a trap for our brain. So something to consider. So brain can, the sugar can take over our brain chemistry, and it, deliberately make us crave and eat more of it. And again, that's why I'm doing the junk food sugar debunk challenges every couple of months now, because there's so much that's linked, as I've been talking about, to our health when we have too much sugar. So not all sugars are created equal. So it's very obviously a negative contributor to our health and our lives, but not all sugars are equal. And some are much worse than others, and of course, vice versa. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some sugars that should definitely be avoided as much as possible. And then we'll talk about some recommended alternatives. So think about that. Do you use any sugar alternatives in your daily life? So if at all possible, avoid the following products. Aspartame. Anyways, it's seen in diet sodas. Some people can tolerate it well short term, but others get migraines, digestive distress. There's other things about that. They found at University of Liverpool, toxicity to the brain cells. So definitely look up aspartame. Sucralose, best to avoid, commonly known as Splenda. It's processed using chlorine. So I do some research on that. High fructose corn syrup. This is a bit harder to avoid. High fructose corn syrup is almost in everything that we eat. And it's a huge contributor to fat cell buildup. Okay, so high fat cell buildup in the liver, for the best example. It also is a contributor to leptin resistance and major weight gain. So we want to avoid that high fructose corn syrup. A study even found that high fructose corn syrup is sometimes laced with mercury. So you can look that one up too. So anyway, double check if you are using an alternative, do some research on it and make sure it's something you're willing to put in your body. Here's some ideas to use instead. If you definitely want something sweet, you can use some stevia, coconut sugar, raw honey. Again, it's not like you want to consume a lot of these, but see if you get your taste buds to transfer over to an actual food source sugar versus processed food source. One thing I like to do, since I really like sweet tart types of things, is craisins have been really helpful to me. I have a big container of them, and I'll just go grab a couple, and that seems to help me with my sweet tooth. And also I'm giving my body some nutrition at the same time versus just sugar. All right, so I think I am almost done here. So taking action. It's ideal, but it's not as practical at this point in life to cut sugar out entirely. But it's worth doing the exercise to find it, know where it is, understand how you're eating it, why you're eating it, finding alternative ways to function, through your diet and how you eat, without being blindly victim of sugar. And that's again why I'm doing that junk food sugar debunk challenge, 30-day challenge every couple of months now. And just, it's not even about, the challenge isn't even about, hey, day one, you got to cut everything out. All we're going through 30 days to learn how sugar is impacting your life. 30 days, how is junk food impacting your life, and learning about all of that, and then figuring out how to create a more supportive relationship with that sugar and a more supportive relationship with junk food, therefore implementing other ways of eating that are more supportive. So tonight, I know I shared a ton of information and it's probably overwhelming, but changing your eating habits and taking control of your health requires a lot of effort in the beginning, but it's so rewarding. Higher quality of life, maintaining a more healthy, supportive weight, more natural energy, better moods, more confidence. Okay, healthier version of you. So taking that step and taking the continued steps, not necessarily easy, and it's not always necessarily the best time to make a change, but when will it be the best time to make a change for your health? I'll be totally honest with you. There's never going to be a perfect time to take care of your health. And I can totally speak to that. So anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this podcast and to watch it. Go ahead. I'm going to put a link in the comments below on how to find out about the junk food and sugar debunk challenge. And at the time of this recording, it is open for signing up and getting into the program. If you're watching this at another time, there's always possibility to get on the wait list for the next time it's open. But again, when is it the right time to decide to take care of your health and to take care of you? And again, speaking from experience, it's never the perfect and right time. It's just the right time to do it and to start. So one big area that you can tackle is sugar. Okay. And again, it was so hard for me to do. And again, that was 2006 that I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes. And I can speak being on the other side now. Every step was worth it to get sugar, my sugar addiction to where I controlled it. It doesn't control me anymore. All right. Have a great night, everybody. And again, you can also private message me if you want to learn more about the junk food sugar debunk challenge, and or if you have any other questions. I am also taking a couple new one-on-one clients starting late March and early April. I'll have some spaces available. All right. I will talk to you soon. Have a great night, and I will see you next week. Okay. Bye-bye.